approach, interpretation to text.
So it's all about how you read a text. So this is like what you got when you got into that problem a couple of weeks ago with your friend, that English professor.
Monica?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So the issue is,
I don't remember which problem. So
well, it's a question of like what is issues about the text per se. So to some degree, what we try to do with the Hasidic hermeneutics, with this reading, is like, what does the text mean? What can you do with it? What does it tell us now? What can it say to us about our lives? Whereas, some of the other types of approaches are, what did the text say? Like trying to get back to some kind of historical statement about the text. So this is the postmodern angle of it. What matters really is how you read it. Brings us back again to the word, centrality of the word, the transformative power of the word. So whatever it is, however it was that the text came to be, or whatever those issues may or may not be. But the question is, more importantly, what does it mean as a living, vibrant
What does it mean
text?
to us? What could we draw from the text today?
Yeah, otherwise it's just, it's like, we don't ask us what Shakespeare means. That's terrible.
Right.
Even though it's good.
What is Shakespeare trying to tell us about how we should relate to the opposite sex?
Which is, not a bad,
Yeah.
he's a great writer and all, but still, there's a difference between a word that lives and breathes and a word of fire, as it were. We're told the word of black fire on white fire.
Right. I remember, speaking of vows, I spent about 6 years basically bedridden by chronic fatigue syndrome, basically from 1988 to 1994. And many times during those years that I became religious and converted to Judaism, I said, I tried to make a deal with God. I said, God, if you'll make me well, I'll just totally live my life for you. And I was desperate, and I was fervent, and I remember one time
The problem is in Judaism it goes the other way around.
you're supposed to live your life for God, and then
Well, it's like what we talked about in terms of like the vehicle, to use the Buddhist terminology. The chukim, the laws are the journey.
right.
So it is through the living of life in this manner that you achieve the transcendence and the spiritual power. It's not the other way around. You don't get saved and then suddenly it all makes sense.
Well, I was raised a Christian, so I was used to you get saved and then it all makes sense.
And then you don't have to pay your alimony anymore because
Well, I remember.
you're okay with God.
Well, no, you're still supposed to lead a good life, but there's the moment of grace and transformation and salvation that then kickstarts you to righteousness. I remember one time in my life that Dennis Prager called me. It was, I think, around 1991, possibly 1992, and my mum said, "Oh, there's a phone call for you." I picked it up, and this man says, "Luke," and I said, "Dennis Prager?" He said, "You can tell who it is from one word." And I said, "Yes." I said, "I was just listening to a lecture of yours, and I'm really inspired, and I want to live my life for God."
Yes.
And Dennis says, "Well, you don't have to be an extremist. You can be moderate about it." And I remember, like, Rabbi Yitzhak Adlerstein called me several times in response to letters that I'd written him, listening to him on the radio, and like every time he called, I had this like squeal of joy, and it's like, "Oh, I want to live my life for God. I want to live my life for God." And then a year or so later, I was visited by various women, and I wasn't living my life for God. And so I've had my ups and downs over the years, but
You were distracted.
one thing you can definitely say about the last
But you
18
see-
years, they haven't been just one perpetual living my life for
See, this is
God.
where the Hasidic, if you had studied Hasidic texts, you would have been helped.
Okay, help me.
Because that was the central teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. See, the Litvak way, the old way, is this kind of idea that like everything needs to be negated. In fact, remind me, we have to come back to that. But your biography even needs to be negated. Everything is like it's like kind of the Yeshaya Leibovich approach is the extreme statement of this. Nothing means anything. Davening doesn't mean anything. Nothing. You just have to do it because you have to do it. But the Hasidic thought, and I think this is the most appealing thing, again hinging on the word, is that everything can be transvalued. So if you're faced with a challenge of women, for example, he specifically uses that example because I guess every man is challenged by that. It means that because King David had that challenge, right? It means that you're not supposed to. It's not an issue of negation. It's an issue of transformation. Aufhebung, to use the Hegelian phrase, of raising it up. Sublation is the technical word. You need to. So that means that your goal, your place in this world, your place in all those journeys, is to deal with the challenge of love and take it from a fallen place, from a misplaced place, and transform it into the highest form of transcendence, of serving God, of spiritual experience. And it is, that it is the highest sphere, right? You know that when you say the Shema, right? Hashem Echad. So it's an old teaching, but Echad, one, is the same numerical value as the word love, Ahava. And that's what you're supposed to, in the meditation of Shema, is total unity of all things in love.
I just want to take like a whip and just like
no, but that's
lacerate my back as we talk about this. As I remember my broken vows to
because you
live
want
my
to
life
do
for
that.
God. I just want to like whip myself.
Yeah, but where is that coming from? That also is a kind of
self-hatred.
Yeah, but is that a challenge? Who's to say that that's actually a response?
I remember when
Who says that it's a valid response or a healthy response?
Yeah, I don't think it's so healthy. I remember when I first became really religious Jewishly, I became Shomer Negia, but won't even touch the opposite sex. And so I would go out and I'd hug trees because I was like wanted to connect. I wanted to connect, but I wouldn't allow myself to touch women. I just like hug trees, and I went like so quickly from not touching women to
not touching trees
to touching women.
Spilling your sap.
And I remember, like, I wouldn't touch women, I wouldn't shake hands with these old biddies who come around the house to see my parents or to visit me.
That's probably just a manifestation of the same thing. Rav Kook said very, very beautifully, I think, and it's such an important lesson that nobody listens to, is that in the beginning of his classic work on tshuva, which if you haven't read, you need to read, he says that tshuva does not come out of mental illness.
They haven't read my blog.
You can't come out of you can't do tshuva from a position of mental illness. Now, one would say, and I think your experiences in your former life would point out that those kind of like self-damaging things, those kind of like strict, severe reactions, and in any direction are very frequently psychological manifestations of the same thing.
Yeah.
The same problem.
Yeah.
Just taken in all different kinds of...
Just one extreme to the
all
other.
different ways. And again, that hasn't... See, that's the problem with that approach. It doesn't solve the issue. So, that brings me to... I always like to do teachings from a text.
Go for it.
I guess you're bringing back my good days, When I used to give in Jerusalem, I had a shir that I used to give every week. And then I was forced to move to the United States, and I feel like the word was gone for me. The voice was gone and all that.
So what are you reading from?
So this is a classic Hasidic text. This is not in my shir, and I'm going to put it in there. So I thought I'd share it. So it's a book by one of the great, again, Polish thinkers before the Yitzhak, the Tiferet Shlomo, the Radomsker, who was a very interesting fellow. He was a great genius, very great intellectual genius. Everybody thought he would go over there was a split at that time, without getting into history, between people who were going to lean more towards the like Lithuanian type cold intellectual ways, and then there was a kind of Hasidic camp of more love for the common man, etc.
Mhm.
And while he was recognized as one of the great intellects in